Oh, do you want to do our musical intro this time?
No, that's 100% you.
Okay.
I was just trying to give you like
Ooh,
some
give me a
background.
beat. Give me a background beat.
We have snaps. And you want to know the dumbest thing? Is that I'm pretty sure like I gave you some kind of like background things on another episode, just a random, and this shit just cut it all out. Ready?
Ready!
Awesome. Good morning, Ollie.
Good morning, Danny.
People tell me all the time that I'm not going to go to therapy because I don't need it. I'm not crazy. I don't have a diagnosis. And so I don't think I need it. Do you think that therapy is just for people who have diagnoses?
Oh, obviously not. It's for everybody. Well, but not necessarily. You don't have to. But yeah, for so many reasons.
Beautiful. Perfect. And so that's something that we want to talk about today. This is Freudian Slips. This is the place where we get to talk about the shrinks, things, and kinks of the mental health field. My name is Danny. I'm joined by our lovely host, Ollie, and we're going to be talking about why someone would go to therapy. Now, you have three kind of big, broad ideas, reasons why someone might go to therapy. And so we're going to get into it today. Starting with big reason number one why someone might go to therapy is to address mental health and emotional well being. Now, I think this is kind of what most people think of when they think about going to therapy. But, Ollie, why don't you kind of kick us off? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I think most people might think what we talked about almost in our last episode, where there's like something big that happens, or I feel like we've all experienced in this day and age, something happens in our lives and a loved one or a friend is like, hey, like, maybe you should go to therapy, or like, maybe you should talk to a therapist about this. And I realized we touched on that last session, but it made me realize there's so many other like broader categories of reasons why I think people would go to therapy. And so for this first one, with mental health and emotional well being, I think that could consist of things like gaining self awareness or understanding, gaining coping skills and building our overall levels of resilience, learning how to emotionally regulate. So I kind of view it as, I don't want to say like almost those like kind of early tiers, but maybe like very foundational. Like just kind of the general awareness, like observing what's going on in our lives. Like, oh, I didn't even realize I reacted to things this way. Or like, like I tend to really freak out in these situations and like other people don't. And I don't understand why I do. And so I think it could be a lot of education from a therapist that teaches you like, oh, what are coping skills, and different ones work for different people. We can talk about it. You can try to implement it in your own life. Oh, how do we emotionally regulate? Like how do we even start to comprehend that? And then what are baby steps to try and implement in the moment when you feel very dysregulated? So I think this first one, even though like mental health and emotional well-being can sound like very broad, I think at least some of the specific kind of areas of self-awareness, learning these general skills, I think that can be very foundational to any future therapeutic work someone might build upon.
For sure. If you're talking about coping skills and resilience, what does that mean? Because to me, coping skills is kind of like a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you
Mm-hmm.
say someone's coming in for coping skills and resilience, what are you kind of like helping them out
Mm-hmm. So I think it depends what examples people are bringing into the room or what specifically they're needing to cope with. But I think that could be like grounding techniques or things that help us feel like in our bodies. It could be somatic work to just figure out like, okay, where are things living in me, and like how does it feel? What's happening? And like how do I work with that? I think kind of to go with the emotional regulation, there are times where I think we all just feel like, or just whether it's in your head or whether it's in your body. Because I had a supervisor that taught me, and I absolutely love this way of thinking. She's like, Ollie, when you meet with people, you're either going to realize they live up here and they live in their heads, or they're stuck in their bodies. And she's like, if they're stuck in their bodies, you got to bring them up here. And if they're living in their heads, you got to suck them in and rein them in here. And so when I think I'm starting to work with someone who I can tell is really seeking coping skills, I think a part of what I'm naturally doing is trying to figure out, where do you tend to live? And so if someone lives up here, it might be that anxiety loop, or it might be ruminating or catastrophizing. And it's like, okay, whoa, whoa, whoa. How do we cope with these moments a little better that might suck them into their body and like cut off that train of thought? Or vice versa. Maybe they're so emotional, or they feel things so deeply in their body that it's like, whoa, whoa, we're like completely dysregulated out in public and like overwhelmed with emotion. How do we recognize what's going on and maybe logically talk ourselves down and get you more up here so that you're not so flooded with those things? And so I think that's such a good point, Danny. Like, coping skills is such a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
But I think they quite literally are skills and tools that you can implement in moments when you are struggling to cope with a situation, with a certain type of maybe conversation with a loved one that you know just like sends you over the edge every single time. I think it's a way to recognize like, whoa, like this is an area where I'm entering my red zone, and how do I get back down to my green zone? But that's something I personally use because I also like zones of regulation in my work, or I utilize that a lot. So that's kind of one example of, I think, how I view coping skills.
I like that. And I think that really ties in like the self-awareness, what you were talking about at the end is like the self-awareness and the understanding to coping skills and resilience. I like that word resilience. And I think that was kind of like a bigger one for me. Coping skills, the reason why I say it's a little bit of a buzzword is because when I hear people use that, when I see what they're describing with that word, it really sounds as if, what can I do to stay the same? Or what can I do to kind of survive while everything kind of stays the same around me? You know, and it's like that's something that I haven't really liked. So for example, is whenever I get upset, I'm gonna go for a walk. It's like, yeah, I don't actually think that's a bad idea. Or whenever I get really sad, I'm gonna put on happy music, or I'm gonna put 10 reasons why I should be happy or why my life is great. And it's like, those are fine. They're really good elementary kind of like first step, almost like safety planning kind of things, preparatory things, but they don't actually help or address the feeling that I'm going through. Like, they don't really kind of explore it. Or like you said, they don't like help us get through it or understand where it's coming from and how do I kind of move into another place. And so like a coping skill, I think, is acknowledging that what we're going through is very, very difficult and that it's going to come with some inherent discomfort. And so it's a skill, it's a tool that we provide them to help them through that discomfort, but by no means is trying to keep them in the same spot or having them kind of avoid or step away from the issue that they need to address. And so the resilience piece really kind of spoke to me. I think that if we are like offering coping skills, if that's what you're coming in for, resilience is, I think, an appropriate growth measure that you should be looking for as a client to say, you know, hey, am I actually like doing this right? Am I actually going, am I actually learning? Am I actually getting a benefit from therapy? Well, if your coping skills build emotional resilience, then I think that you're heading in the right direction.
Ooh, I love that you not like latched onto that word, but noticed it, because it's just a personal bias. But I think things like building resilience, or people needing to like learn how to build grit into their personalities, is so important. And I was listening to a podcast, Hot Take, there was some historian on it, and he was talking about how, you know, people that always say like the world we live in now, or what a time. And he's like, you know, no disrespect, like it's very difficult. And like, there's many aspects of the world or places that it's like, yes, obviously, you know, not saying the world is perfect by any means. He's like, however, as a historian, it's really hard for me to think of any other better of a time that we could have been alive. Like, I am legally blind. I would have been killed off so long ago. So long ago. Can't eat gluten. Again, I wouldn't have lived past 12. It wouldn't have happened. They would have been like, girl, you're dead weight.
Yeah.
4'11". What's the use there? To climb into small holes? I'm blind too. Can't see anything. Wouldn't have worked for me. And so this guy was kind of talking about how interesting he found those kind of comments nowadays, because just from his perspective, it's actually such a great time to be alive historically. And obviously, you can pick that statement apart till the end of the earth if you want to. But I think that's so important. And I think that's why people need to build things like grit and resilience, because I don't believe in things like motivation. I think sometimes we feel very motivated. We're in motivated moods, the way that we eat or how much we've slept or different like breathing techniques and things we implement on a regular basis can make us much more motivated. That's great. However, that's fleeting. That will not last every day. Every morning when you've decided that you have to go to work or work out, or you will not feel motivated every day. So how do you build a muscle of grit and do it anyway? And I think the resilience piece kind of speaks to that. Is I think we are naturally resilient beings. Like the human body is crazy. And the things that it's like, oh, we have an infection, and then all the little, what are they? White blood cells, they're like, it's like, how does our bodies do this? Like, they're so resilient, and they just like fight for us and work for us all the time. And so I think we need to build this muscle of grit and like work for ourselves and be like, oh, this is really uncomfy. And like, that probably means I need to do it. And there's some part about it that will make other things in life feel even better than they feel already, because I've worked through something really hard to earn it. Or the days that the motivation comes easy, you're like, wow, this is awesome. But maybe the days that it comes harder, you learn and gain other things from. And so I'm just glad that you liked the word resilience too, because I think that's a big part of my practice, is like trying to empower my clients in knowing that even on the days that the marriage is hard, or the skills and the tools and things that they're working on is hard, just like you said, like, yeah, these things that's a part of it. Like, this is so hard and this sucks and this isn't fair. And now what am I going to do?
Yeah, I like that one. You also wrote in your notes, part of mental health and emotional well-being is emotional regulation. What does that mean, and what does that look like kind of in your practice?
So this is when I think zones of regulation are really big for me. Being a school psychologist, it's how we kind of taught kids about their emotions, and I view it like a stoplight. And green is probably how you and me are feeling now. It's nice and calm. Yellow happens right before red, and red is when when people say, oh, I feel like I went from 0 to 100, or maybe you're breaking down crying, you're yelling, like you're probably in red. How those things were taught to me is even the expression like, oh, like you just popped your lid. I was taught it looks like a little brain. And when we pop our lid, it's because our amygdala right behind our frontal lobe just floods our brain. We're full emotion. And so our frontal lobe is offline. Everything that decides how we plan and organize and our logic is like, you're driving in the fog. You're like, well, this is fuck. I don't know. It's offline because we're full emotion at that point. And so emotional regulation is finding, okay, when can I recognize I'm in yellow so that I can get myself back down to a green? And green is, like you were saying, Danny, maybe you need to go on the walk when you're in yellow. That's great. That can get us back down to a green. But after the walk, when we're in green, it's like, okay, so what can I implement now? How can I make this better for next time? How can I repair whatever the situation was, whatever it might be? Like, how do I approach this now? Because when the kid is in a classroom flipping over tables, that's not the time to be like, buddy, hey, what are you doing? No, he's flipping over tables. You take the rest of the class and you're like, you know what sounds fun, guys? Kickball, woo! And then another person is making sure the kid flipping tables is okay. You just get everyone else out, and you got to wait for him to come back down. And then when he's in there and he's huffing and puffing in the corner, but he's exhausted, and he's like, or she, girls can flip over tables too. But when they're just, you go in there and you're like, hey, what do you have? Big emotions. What was going on? Like, that's when you go in there and you're like, dude, what just happened? And he's like, I got really mad. I got really sad. And it's like, yeah, let's talk about it. And so it's like, that's when you can kind of level with someone and be like, all right, maybe next time, how do you think we could approach this a little differently? Like, what was actually going on that got you to that point that you can come to me next time and be like, Miss Ollie, like I'm an 8 out of 10. And it's like, okay, how do we make sure you do not get to a 10 out of 10? And so those are the things that I think are important for not just kids to learn, but adults, because no one ever teaches us that sometimes necessarily. And so that's how I teach it to my clients is I think emotional regulation is being able to learn how to A, identify your yellow, which sometimes seems non-existent, and then B, recognize like I'm totally in my yellow right now. And it's like, great. So what can we do to get back to a green and then reevaluate the situation?
Ooh, I like that. Very nice. I like that.
How do you deal with like emotional regulation in the therapy room?
Yeah, for me, emotional regulation is about the relationship we have with our emotions. And so I think it's easy for us to regulate positive emotions, or easier for us to regulate positive emotions. For example, we can be happy and we're totally fine with it. We can be comfortable and we're totally fine with it. But when it comes to like regulating positive emotions, we also have a lot more things in place to do that, like tasks that we have to do throughout the day, mantras that we tell ourselves to make sure that our egos don't get too big. And so we still have ways to regulate positive emotions. It's the negative emotions that I think most people have an issue with. Either the emotion runs them, the emotion regulates the person, or the person has these huge things that are getting in the way from them understanding their emotion. So I believe emotional regulation is developing a healthy relationship with all of your emotions and learning what they're trying to communicate to you. For example, something I say all the time is that I have a lot of clients that come in with anxiety. Anxiety is the emotion that they're struggling with. And so our relationship with anxiety first starts by figuring out what anxiety is trying to tell us. I think anxiety tends to have a universal message and it says, I don't know something. Anxiety is us struggling to answer three questions in the world. Am I doing it? Am I doing enough? And do I belong here? If you cannot answer those questions for yourself, you then turn to the world to answer it. And when everyone's giving you a bunch of different answers, when you don't have the confidence to answer it for yourself, people tend to be very anxious. So now that we know that this emotion is trying to give us a message, it's trying to say, hey, I don't know something. We're not threatened by it so much. And then we can actually do things that specifically address that thing, which is why, if I'm anxious, going out for a bike ride might feel good in the moment, but it won't actually help you change the situation. It won't let you come back to anxiety and address it. Do what it's actually asking you to do. But now that we know that anxiety is us struggling to know something, the coping skills, the things that we're teaching them is how do you ask questions? How do you verify information? How do you find that for yourself instead of always looking to other people? How can I check that information for myself? And so go through any negative emotion, we figure out what it's trying to tell us, and then we address that directly. Sadness says I'm out of comfort. Anger says I'm out of validation. Fear says I'm out of, I don't know, what does fear say?
I'm just fascinated by how you view these things because like even just hearing how you talk through anxiety, like I love it, but it's just funny because like I've never thought of it that exact way. So it's super cool in such an independent job, right? Like you have supervisors, but even then you can't like watch them do therapy. They can just kind of teach you as best as they can outside of the therapy room. So it's fascinating to me hearing how you even conceptualize and talk a client through something like anxiety because I think it's totally valid and I'm like super interesting. I love that. And it's not how I do it. So
Yeah.
I think it's just really neat. So when you're like, what does fear say? I'm like, I don't know. What does fear say? Fear says
Fear says I'm running out of safety.
that too. That too.
And so our job is then to help promote a sense of felt safety in the room. We do that specifically. And so it's like when these negative emotions come up, I regulate them by understanding that every emotion is there for a reason. It's there to help me live as effectively as possible. And so if I learn to listen, if I learn to understand, then I won't be so overwhelmed when they come. If I learn to address what the emotion is asking me to look at, then I won't be so overtaken when they show up.
See, and Danny, maybe logical isn't the right word, but just knowing you and even just in our friendship, like this makes sense to me that you and I could so see how you would walk someone through this in the room where like I view and I don't have a see-through glass, but if I normally have water in a cup, I tell people, and again, this is how I was taught it. And I honestly think this might have been even more in school psychology too. But I was always taught people are born with maybe a set level of anxiety or depression. So if yours is like down here, you got a lot more room before your cup's overflowing. But maybe if you're up here, there's a lot less room before your cup overfills. So like we all might have kind of that homeostasis that's different person to person. And it's about kind of realizing where your homeostasis might sit when you start to notice that it's okay, I think I'm going toward the brim here. And not viewing that as like a part of yourself. Like it's not like, hi, like I'm an anxious person. It's like, no, like my name's Ollie and like here's my anxiety. Like his name is Antiguo. Antiguo, come on, introduce yourself. And they're chained to you. They can get bigger, they can get smaller. Like, what do they look like? What are they telling you? What are they? And when you sit down and you're like, all right, I got a job interview. And you're like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Like, Antiguo, sit right here. Like, buddy, we're getting through this one, okay? And like, I will talk to you after. We'll debrief. Like we'll debrief. And then it's like, you got it, okay? You got it. And we're going to go into this interview. And so it's just so funny to me, like seeing how you are. I love how just like methodical. It's like, okay, this is where we start. What is it trying to tell us? Let's see how we can address that. Boom. Like a need gets met and we remove the behavior.
Yeah.
Or like the behavioral outburst is like, we don't need that response anymore. And I love that when I talk to clients, I'm like, oh, what's its name? What are they doing? Like picture them in an AA circle sitting in your brain. Who's holding the talking stick? And so I just love how differently we approach these things. And I think it's like part of the beauty of why I love this job.
I think that's what makes this a lot of fun, is because, like, I know what I do, but I love coming in. Let's bring up a topic and give people two completely ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, like talk about completely different ways to address emotional regulation and figuring out like, whoa, like what are my emotions and when do they come up and how do I work with them? And there's different therapists that have totally different styles that will have very different ways of walking you through how to do that. But again, that is just one reason under this umbrella of mental health and emotional well-being, which might be why someone decides to try out therapy.
Beautiful. Love it. We ready to move on to number 2?
Number 2, come on down.
The second big reason why someone might show up to therapy is to work on relationships and social interactions. When you wrote this one, this was probably my favorite one because this is something that I think I work with a little bit more, considering that I see mostly couples. So the first one that you wrote down was under relationships and social interactions, what are we actually doing? We're working to improve communication. And so here we're looking to build communication skills to help people kind of express themselves more effectively and to build stronger relationships. This one, I think, is one of my primary things that I'm always trying to do, right? For me, this is step 1, right? Before we actually dig into what people are coming in for, before we're digging into, the obstacles in everyone's way, is finding a way for them to speak respectfully and effectively to each other. So I love that one. What is one of your kind of like best ways or favorite ways to improve communication?
Well, so I think, Danny, like you mentioned, when you have like a couple in the room and you can see it happening, I don't know if you've ever noticed this or like heard couples say this before, but I kind of love when a couple will have maybe a harder moment in session. Like maybe it's like they come into session and I'm all telehealth. So it's like maybe they log on and they're like, Ollie, I'm not going to lie. Like we were kind of mid-argument right before we logged on. Or like they almost feel like they're not showing up right to therapy. Or it's like, oh, like this isn't really what we wanted to talk about. And I'm like, no, this is great because I can see how this plays out, that two people are not able to put a filter on and show me like the version they want or talk me through it. Like I'm seeing it. And I love that. I'm looking at how their body language is, like how they side eye each other, are they talking over each other? Or I'll get couples that are so mad at each other and someone starts talking over the other person and they're like, sorry, you were talking. I'll let you finish. And I love it. I'm like, even in anger, they're like, let them have their space. So like they can have the floor. Then I'll talk. And so I like seeing it. And then I think I can help pause them when need be, or tweeze it apart with them and be like, okay, like when this person said this, how did you feel? And like, okay, like why did that come out that way? Because it's interesting. Like you said this, and I always tell people, I'm like, correct me if I'm wrong. Be like, Ollie, shut up. I didn't say that. I'm like, you just let me know. But I'm like, I don't think you meant that. It kind of sounded like you meant this. And they're like, yeah, that is what I meant. And so the other person, this actually just happened the other day. I was at my sister and my brother-in-law's house, and he said something jokingly to me. And I was just like, wow, AJ, intent versus impact. Okay. And I was being just like snarky and joking back with him. And he was like, what? And I was like, it's just like something I'll say in therapy, and especially like with couples, you know, in communicating, sometimes someone has a certain intent, but that's not how it impacted the other person. And so I think it's just like important to know how you meant something versus how it came out and how the other person like took it. And my sister, like a few days later, was like, Olivia, that was wonderful. She's like, I don't like, he's literally used it multiple times since. And he's like, I think this is the intent versus impact thing. Or he'd be like, wait, I don't know if the impact was how I intended that. And I'm like, yes, AJ, yes. He's Midwest. So I'm like, anytime I can get him on board with any therapy thing, I'm like, yes, like Ohio therapy. And so I think that's like a great example, is I think sometimes there's just these little things we can throw in that you're like, oh, I didn't even realize how much that takes tension off, or it like takes blame out of it. And you can just easily, it's something that could have spiraled into an argument or a much bigger thing that we can kind of address and be like, whoa, 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 let's kind of clear up what just happened there. And then it completely, like, it's almost like a balloon that's getting bigger and bigger, and we can just like deflate it in a moment. And so I love doing it with couples in the room. Not that you can't work on these things with one person at a time, but for what it's worth, I think, and this is also for anyone out there that has been in therapy and is like, oh my gosh, we were like arguing in front of our therapist. And it's like, no, like that's why we're here. Like I want to be able to help walk you through these things. So the next time it happens, whether you're in the room or outside of the virtual room, you know how to tackle it a little bit differently, and we can really break down like specific things that can be done in those moments. So that's just kind of one example of how I like to work with it in the room.
I love that. While the concept of intent versus impact is like, I get it. Like, oh yeah, that's familiar. I've never heard that like phrase. I like that phrase.
I think it's a good one. It's very buzzwordy, which I don't, or like very like what I would consider like therapist-y, which I naturally, I think I kind of try to stay away from, or I'm like, no, am I one of those woo-woo therapists? Yeah. But some of them are good. Some of them I'm like, I get it.
That one's a good one.
That one's a good one. You're a keeper.
I like that one.
With like communication, or what's a good way that you kind of deal with improving communication in an individual or couple setting?
Sure. The first thing that I like to use is, I love Gottman. I think Gottman's great. And I think what Gottman does really, really well is provides us language. And so when we're working on communication, when we're setting that up to get ready to tackle big things, whether I'm working with an individual or a couple, I want them to be able to call out the things that aren't working in a respectful but meaningful way, right? So right now, based off of how I feel, I might feel as if you're yelling at me. And I don't like that. And so every time you do this thing that I'm giving an emotional definition to, that's where couples and people just kind of fall off the rails, because now it's just trying to convince each other that my definition or that my experience is right. Whereas if we're able to understand that, hey, this is a criticism, this is a sign of defensiveness, this is a shot of contempt, right? Once all of us are able to get on board that this is what it is, these are what they look like, we're able to kind of call that out when we're in an argument. I've had a lot of couples say, well, like, whoa, hold on, like that, you're hitting me with the kitchen sink. That's a form of criticism. We need to slow down, right? Mm-hmm. This is a yes, but statement. We know that, I just did that again, right? I hear myself getting ready to say but, and I know that's going to come off as defensive, right? And so for me, that's one of the first biggest things, is that can we actually understand, define the things that aren't helpful, and can we let our partner know in a respectful way that we all kind of understand the definition, get everyone on the same page with the language. And then after that, improved communication for me is about being a good listener, right? Because even going back to your first example about the kid flipping tables, right? sometimes people have absolutely no way of understanding what's going on with them. It's our job. It's really our job as therapists. But as therapists who work with couples, I think part of our job is teaching or helping their partners become better listeners, right? And so sometimes I don't know what's going on. Does that mean that I just have to go into another room and wait till I figure it out by myself and then come back to you and tell you? No. I think it's your partner's job to be able to take in the bits and pieces that you are giving them and help piece things together, right? And so I love Imago because Imago does a great job of helping people become better listeners. And so for me, that's the biggest thing. Let's get some good language so we all are kind of speaking the same tongue. Let's figure out how to call these things so we can be respectful about it. And let's learn how to be good listeners. That helps improve communication for me.
Oh, I love it. And I think while you were explaining that too, Danny, I think it's important to throw out there because, again, I don't know if you get this, but I've noticed it a lot. A bunch of couples I have worked with seem to believe, or people come in with this belief that like conflict is bad. And it's like, how do we avoid conflict? And I'm like, no, how do we approach conflict the right way? Like how do we navigate conflict together? Because it's like, I don't know anyone who in this day and age, like we don't die at 30 of the common cold anymore for the most part. If we want to be with someone for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we're going to have some conflict. Like, and that's okay. I don't think trying to avoid it. It's kind of the same thing with emotions. Like avoiding them, I don't really think is the answer. But like when it comes around, how is it like, okay, I've met you. We've been here before. How do we approach this? Like how do we bridge this a little healthier this time and like get out on the other end together? Or Imago, absolutely love it. It's like we're driving down this road. Like we're going to get a flat tire. There's going to be some speed bumps. Like hell, we're on the side of the road. We have no car jack. Like what do we do now? Like I think it's just how do we navigate these things together, especially in terms of the communication kind of topic that we're on, and especially in a couples setting.
Yeah, conflict resolution is another thing that you wrote down, and I think it's absolutely key. A lot of people don't like to have conflict. This is one of like those terrible pieces of advice that I get from people, right? When either I'm walking out on the street with my wife and a lovely soul comes up and just strikes up a conversation, or when people find out what I do, this is always one of those things that they like to kind of throw at me to be like, let me tell you, put this in your books, you can pay me later. They say, never fight in front of your kids. They say, never go to bed angry. They talk about never arguing in front of people. I think conflict resolution, arguing, is a healthy part of a relationship, right? And so teaching people how to have conflict, how to resolve conflict, is what we're looking for. To me, conflict is just when two people really believe in their points of view, right? I think that shows, conviction. I think that shows passion. I think that shows a desire to have your partner understand you. That's why we're arguing. If I didn't care about what you said, or if I didn't care about your opinion, I'd just listen to it and go one ear out the other, right? But the fact that we are kind of like taking our stances and being like, no, we're bumping heads, is because what I think is important to me. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to acknowledge.
Yeah, and people end up in therapy, I think, because even maybe it's a belief that like, well, I never saw my parents or my caregivers argue, so that must be bad that I do that, which is like, no. Or they're like, I never saw it. I know that it happened, but I just have no model of how to handle this now because it wasn't done in front of me. And I like your definition of conflict, Danny, because yeah, we're not saying like domestic violence in front of kids, but you can argue, you can both have strong opinions on something and be going back and forth a little bit in a way that kids learn how to talk about these things, because that's going to show up in friendships with siblings as you get older, in romantic relationships, like at work with your boss. Like we are going to disagree with people, and there's ways to navigate those conversations in a healthy way. There's ways to completely avoid them to the point that you're like just building resentment, or like you said, just in one ear out the other, and we're never actually fixing or like helping this dynamic at all. And so I think being able to have those conversations in front of kids is actually incredibly important. But that person probably knew a lot more than us, and they should probably have our job.
Yeah.
So
On that one though, like sticking with the kids thing is, and also tying this into like resilience and just emotional regulation, having a healthy argument in front of a kid also shows them that the emotion that you are expressing isn't a threatening one, right? It's not something that has to be secret. It's not something that has to be kind of taken away and only shown behind closed doors. That we can actually express this. Everyone's going to be fine. No one's going to get hurt, right? And so I think learning to have a healthy argument can be one of the most beneficial things that you could ever do.
Yeah. And I forget the name of the actual little, I don't know if it'd be called like a theory or tool, but again, School of Psychology introduced me to it. They're these little like plush toys that are all different emotions, kind of like how now Inside Out looks. And they all have different little figures that are like little plushies that embody and look like with their little eyes, whatever that emotion is. And one of the ways that they teach kids anger in school, if like someone in the school utilizes this kind of a method, is especially with anger's in front. And then you start to figure out all the other things that this little kid felt. And you're like, okay, like let's all the things the kiddo felt, we start lining up behind anger. And when you look at it from the front, it's like, okay, so what do you see? And they're like, anger. And then we move them sideways. And it's like, but see, all these things are actually behind anger. Like anger is more of like this covering emotion or like the top of an iceberg, what we see. But anger normally comes out as a way for us to not feel things that are a lot harder to feel than anger, like shame and guilt and embarrassment. Like those things are hard to feel. They're really big emotions. And especially as a kid that's kind of at that point of their brain development is like, oh, this is bad. Like, or I'm uncomfy. No. And it's like, no, we need to be a little uncomfy. Like that's okay. We just got to learn how to deal with that uncomfiness. And I don't think a lot of people ever learn that. It's just like, I'm angry. And I think as therapists, you and I, and again, especially the way that all this stuff was taught to me in schools and working with kids with these things for years is like, okay, what's really going on under there? It's like, yeah, makes sense. Anger is probably a symptom, but what's all the other things behind anger that are just maybe a lot harder for you to address and feel? And like, where did those come from? And so I think that is also a big piece with the emotional regulation, is understanding that sometimes what it looks like is not necessarily, that doesn't mean you're only feeling anger. Like that could be very, very nuanced.
I like that. Very nice. I almost want to get those little plush things that you're talking
They're way too expensive. I think it was like, and great concept. I love whoever the person is who designed this, but it was one of those that like the little bag of them cost like, I think $1,000. Because it was like the whole curriculum. And I'm like, all right, thank you for your service. I think it's a lovely idea. I can buy little plushies that I think look like these things, and I will do the same thing as a therapist. Sounds
I
good.
like that visual.
Yeah. Yeah, I do love matching like the visual component with whatever you're teaching, or the visualization component with whatever you're teaching, because I think there's so much neuroscience that goes into how people are able to maintain change longer, or they're able to like implement habits for longer periods of time when you can match whatever the practice is or how you're trying to like change your thinking around something with either like a tactile way that you're doing it,
Mhm.
or with like a visualization component. I think it's fascinating.
Very. I agree. People go to therapy for relationships and social interactions. Specifically, they go to therapy to build stronger connections. Well, what do you mean by that?
So I think people can build stronger connections when you're able to, kind of like we said for number one, right? Like if that's very foundational, like understanding, oh, like this is maybe why I react this way. And like, this is why, these things like trigger me so much or make me like, I get so frustrated in these situations. I think you take that and it can help us build stronger relationships by like understanding maybe relationship patterns we've had
Mm,
over the years, or maybe seeing, okay, like this is the role I have played in many kinds of relationships. And it's how interesting. I played it in my family dynamic, I play it in my friend groups. Like, and I think the more that you are aware of those things, the more you can potentially try and change them a little bit if they're negative, or if they're positive. It's like you could just better understand how it's helpful in a relationship, or naturally what the downsides would be too. Like us being therapists, that's not always a positive in relationships. It's like it comes with its pros and cons.
yeah.
And so I think the more we understand about these things, the more we're able to take that into relationships, and we can better address how we show up in relationships, I would say.
beautiful. I read that note and like, yes, I immediately said, oh yeah, that belongs there. But I didn't really know why. I couldn't really flesh that one out. And so thank you. I don't think I can say anything better on that one. That.
Or values. I don't know if I put that under understanding relationships and like their dynamics more,
Hmm.
but I also think a part of what I love to do, and we've talked about this before, is you and I both have different ways or specific exercises we do with clients that help them identify core values. And research has shown that people tend to be in friendship and romantic relationships longer, if not with also with their like lifelong partner, if that's what you choose to do, when they share the same core values. And so I think the better that you can understand what those are and you know why they're so important to you, the more that you can choose to fill your life with other people that also share similar core values, even if they show up differently, which again might lead to some of that conflict because you're both passionate about it, but
Hmm.
it comes from the same place. They're rooted in the same things that you care about. And so I think that also is a way that it can help build stronger relationships because it can be rooted in values that you're more aware of now and you're being more intentional with.
Mm. I like that one. Cool. Very, very good. Love it. One thing that did stand out to me in this section was the understanding relationship dynamics. That one did hit me a little bit in two ways.
Yeah, how?
Maybe it's one. I don't know. Now that I think about it, they're probably mixed together. Anyways, the way is that this is something that I had to kind of like learn for myself is that I am a dude and I have a very particular face. So I don't know if people are watching this or listening to this, but if you're watching it, you're probably going to have like a better idea instantly. Because if I'm not talking, I'm just going to be. We know that that's an issue. I have a particular face, I have a particular voice, I have a particular cadence. I show up in the room and I'm not exactly the life of the party. I've been called mean, I've been called intimidating, I make people nervous. People say that they can't read me, and I'm not trying to put anything off of that. Like I'm not trying to give off that energy. But it is something that I had to learn was just a thing, right? And so when you say, "Hey, people come into therapy for to improve relationships," part of improving relationships is understanding the dynamics. I think that's one of those things is understanding just the type of person you are and how you show up in the room and what that brings out in people, right? I can say, "Well, that's your problem." That's on you, right? But and I'm not saying, and I'm definitely not saying that I need to be like I have to change who I am to make other people comfortable. That's not what I'm saying. What I think I'm trying to say is that in relationships, we have to be aware of those energies of the amount of space we take up in a room and make sure that what we're trying to like share or what we're trying to give off to the other person is what they're trying to receive, right? And maybe this kind of goes back into like the intent versus the impact is that I do have some responsibility to make sure that the person who comes to me feels seen, safe, and secure. And so, one thing for me is when I'm here at the office and another therapist comes in and they say, "Hey, Danny, I've learned through many, many years of practice and I'm happy for it that when someone calls my name, I stop everything I'm doing and I look directly at them and I say hi." Like I try and smile, not because I'm putting on a persona, not because of anything. Like I can just be looking at my screen and hearing what they're saying. And for me personally, I know I'm giving them all my attention. But knowing that the kind of energy I give off, I do want to make sure that they don't kind of have to work double time. Not only am I building a relationship with someone, but I'm also having to try to overcompensate or get over these like mental or emotional obstacles that tell me this person isn't approachable. I want to do my best to kind of get as much of that out of the way. And so when you wrote down, hey, dynamics is an important thing, that's what showed up for me because I know that a lot of parents they look a certain way to their kids. I know some people who are like in interracial relationships. They look a certain way depending on the energy levels. Y'all present a certain way, and I think that provides a dynamic in the room that oftentimes therapy helps us flesh out, understand, and respect a little bit better. So I like that one.
And I like that you viewed it that way, because I think when I wrote that one down, I was thinking more about like the dynamics or the roles that maybe you have played in your family system that you don't realize is how you show up in other relationships. But I
For
like
sure.
how you're mentioning even just, yeah, how you look, your overall energy level. Or it's like, there's therapists or jobs now where it's like people are covered in tattoos, and maybe
Hmm.
traditionally people weren't covered in tattoos. And it's like, well, this shouldn't matter, like it doesn't show how I, my competency at the job. And it's like, yeah, yes, and depending on where you're getting hired or who's looking to hire you, like they still might care about.
Hmm.
Like both of those things can be true simultaneously. Obviously, I'm not covered in tattoos, but not against anyone I have a freaking fig tattoo,
Yeah.
no judgment. So I think things like that, when you brought that up, Danny, of like, yeah, and that's a reality to this situation, or parents that are like, well, but I'm the parent and these are the rules and this is how this has to go. And it's like, okay. And if you want to keep showing up that way and with the same energy and with that same mindset, then the current dynamic that exists
Hmm.
will probably stay the same. And
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure.
that's fine. But there's a reality to this that's like, yes. And that like the harder we dig our heels in here is not going to change what's currently happening.
Yeah.
Something has to change if we want this to change. You can choose what that is. And so I like that you brought that up, because I think you're totally right. Like, you probably have to try a lot harder for people to be like, oh, Danny's approach. I wish someone thought I was intimidating. I have friends with resting bitch faces that I'm like, oh, I wish people just wouldn't approach me. I get approached like, oh my God, honey, are you lost? And I'm like, I've been here 500 times. I'm walking from point A to point B. And they're like, the school bus field trip, you missed it. The bus left. And I'm like, I am not in high school. I'm like, I work here. Damn it. So, I mean, I wish, but I think that that's great that you can recognize and that you saw it from that angle, because you're totally right. Like we naturally just show up in rooms and in places. Like based on the naked eye, I am another white female therapist. I am. The field, I keep hearing the field doesn't need more of them. And I'm sorry. I'm another one, And it's like, I might have Hispanic genes, but no one sees that. No one, I do not outwardly look that way. And I'd be ignorant to think like, well, as a member of the Latina population. And it's like, yes. And I don't look like you. And so I think there's a level of ignorance that people can have. And again, ignorance just means you don't know. I love the word. I think I'm ignorant in a million things. I think people can be very touchy about it. But I think there's a level of ignorance that people have in many different areas that things like therapy can help with. And they can help you dissect them and tweeze them apart in a safe space. And I love, sorry, Danny, I'm like tweezing, or I mean, I'm like folding this into, I don't know if you ever get this, but I kind of love when I have clients that make little comments like, oh, Ollie, this is going to sound so bad. Or like, Ollie, please don't judge me for saying this, but, and I'm like, say it. Like, that's why we're here. Like, so we can talk about these things. And I know you well. I am not going to judge you probably for saying anything that you're about to say.
Probably.
99%. Well, I feel like you can't. I mean, like if you're going to tell me that you're about to kill someone,
Yeah.
there'd be no judgment, but we'd need to have a conversation about like, I'm going to call the cops. Or are you going to call the cops? We're going to have to call the cops. 99.9%, whatever you're about to say, I am probably not like nothing. I'm not going to feel any way about it other than like, ooh, like, why did you think that sounded so bad? Or like, why were you so nervous to share that? And so it's like, I think we provide a very safe space for people to explore like how they've showed up in relationships, or if they're like, damn, like, yeah, I guess in my family and people I've dated, like, I kind of get a lot more out of it than they do. And it's like, okay, let's talk about that. Like, why do you think that is? Like, do you want it to be that way? How does that make you feel even having that revelation? So I really like that you saw it from that angle when it came to understanding relationship dynamics.
Yeah, you definitely look like you have a lot more of the conqueror's blood.
Yeah. That's probably in there too.
Yeah.
It's a nice little melting pot, you know?
Yeah.
All the Nazis fled to Argentina, so here we are. This is what it looks like a few generations later.
But I did assume that that is what you meant, is more about like family dynamics. So circle us back. What do you mean? What was the actual intent of that note?
Oh, yeah, just how people, I think, how you might not realize how you show up in your family system over the years, or the role you kind of played in your family, even that was put onto you, that might be repeating itself and just have shown up in patterns throughout your life.
Awesome. Cool. Ready to go on to the last one?
Last one, number three. Woo, what is
Number
it?
three, why would you go to therapy? Personal growth and development, goal setting and achievement. So, what does that mean?
When I wrote goal setting and achievement, I think it can help people identify goals, because I think a lot of the times, I don't know, maybe we have really vague ideas of what our goals are, and we haven't really thought about why, or it's so vague that it's like, well, how would you even know if you accomplish that, or what does that mean?
For
My
sure.
favorite is people's goal to be happy. And
Mm,
I'm like, okay,
me
well,
too.
how? You're like, cool. Yeah, we might do that very differently. Like,
Yeah,
like what on earth do you mean? And then sometimes when they start to tweeze things apart, it's like goals that culture or society or other people have put onto them. And it's like, well, but that doesn't really sound like you're that excited to do it. Or like you don't actually sound like that's your goal. And I think so, just I think figuring out what your goals even are, coming up with actual game plans and steps that we can track, maybe through things like CBT, even though I know it's not my favorite, but that we can actually track how you're doing when it comes to achieving them, developing strategies that can better lead to achieving them. And I think people just can get a greater sense of, and I know later in there I put increased confidence and self esteem, which I think goes with people can have a greater sense of purpose through achievement. But I also think people view achievement as like, well, I want a PhD. And it's like, what? Like, you just, like, cool, yeah, like, tenure plan. But also, like, you're a single mom who just got her bachelor's and, like, you're a bad bitch. Like, can we not, like, can this not be call for celebration? And so I think sometimes people also have these ideas of, like, I'm not worth it, or I can't celebrate until I reach this. And I'm like, you got through a week where like people yelled at you and were mean to you and all this stuff came up and you figured out how to get it done, even though you're like my boss, like I shouldn't have even been assigned that, they should have been assigned that. Like, that sounds like an achievement to me. And so I think it's nice to also be there for people and like help lift them up in ways that I don't think they give themselves enough credit for.
for sure. Yeah, like it. I think that's a pretty common thing. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of clients that come in and they just kind of sit on the couch and they're like, I know I need to be here. I know things aren't going the way I want them to, but I honestly don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can't even tell you. So, yeah, I think coming together with a trusted therapist to just identify goals, or kind of like to your point, is they have like such a far off or very vague goal that our job is often helping set up a lot more achievable and short-term goals that help get us to the big one. And so, yeah, I agree with that one. Let me see. Personal growth and transformation. What does that mean?
Well, to me, I kind of viewed it as kind of like I said, I think working with a therapist can be like a safe space to tweeze these things apart. So I think that we can provide a space for people to grow and transform in the ways that they're looking to in their life, whether it's like other things we've talked about. Maybe it's in communication with their partner. Maybe it's through better understanding of why they do the things they do and how to build in better coping skills and tools when situations come up. But I do think that allowing a place for people to grow and transform and to explore things like their values, their beliefs, their aspirations, like I think all of those things lead to a greater sense of who we are. It leads to increasing our confidence and our self-esteem, like just overall.
Perfect. Yeah. When I read that one, and I like that you hit values, and I think we're going to be talking about values like throughout the entire show because that's just,
Never again.
yeah.
Just kidding.
Is the way that I see personal growth happen is that people come in with an idea of who they are, good, bad, or indifferent. Good, bad, or indifferent. They bring in their strengths, they bring in their growth areas, and both of those tend to change over time. So, for example, I had a student recently tell me that he's a lover, and he tends to love to a fault. Now, he comes in with that as a strength, that this is something who I know myself to be. But throughout our time together, he's learning that, I'm not trying to change the fact that I love people. I'm not trying to change the fact that love is a core value of mine or something that I'm always looking to guide me to the next best answer. But how I love to a fault shouldn't be something that I'm going for to tell me that I'm doing things well enough. That to a fault shouldn't be something that tells me that the next decision I make is actually the best one for me. And so I think that's a lot of personal growth, is not necessarily changing the core of who we are, but seeing how it changes to actually help us make healthier decisions throughout time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And it's like building in, personal growth might feel bad at times. It might be like having more boundaries in your life where you tell people no. Or kind of like with ADHD, how I always described that to clients is life might feel like you've been a circle peg trying to shove yourself in a square hole. And it's like, well, why don't we just move this and find a circle hole like that you fit in? Like maybe it is a reality that the world is not in many ways created for people with neurodivergent brains, but how can we make your world fit better for you rather than trying to like change who you are? And so I think a lot of personal growth can be, yeah, these expectations we have of ourselves or things we think we want. Like, I thought I was going to be an engineer. I think I still would have been a pretty good engineer.
I
But
think you would
like
have been a great
doing
engineer.
things, thank you, Danny. But doing things like this, I'm like, honestly, like I've loved being like a calculus tutor to high school kids. Like I love talking to people on a daily basis where I'm like, whoa, I never thought ADHD or neurodivergence would be my niche. And look where I am now. I love it like so much. And I used to think I'd want just couples, just sex therapy.
Hmm.
And I do love that. But the more I've done it, the more I'm like, I don't actually know if a full caseload of that would serve me in the way that I would want it to.
Yeah.
And I think I can give so much more of myself and like be a better therapist by like allowing myself to ebb and flow over the years and do things that I'm like, how funny. Like I didn't think this was going to happen, but look where I've ended up and I love it. And so I think a part of personal growth is, yeah, like allowing yourself to see where life takes you and like seeing how if you respond differently to situations than maybe you would have thought, that's okay. You might not have ever known that until you tried to do this thing that you thought you should do or needed to do or whatever it was, but it's only through doing that that you learn more about yourself and you're able to find these other things that actually are more of what you should be doing or is where you feel like you should move or whatever it is. I think every little step we take leads to all these other things.
Mhm.
And so I find that to be like a beautiful aspect of something like therapy that can happen in the therapy room and through talking about different things. And just as we like get older and have different experiences in life in general.
Perfect. Well, that's great. So, three big reasons why you should go to therapy. Number one is for mental health and emotional well being. Number two, if you're trying to improve your relationships and social interactions. And three, for personal growth and development. Ollie, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I just think everyone should try therapy. If you haven't tried it, if you want to try it, Danny, I know we talked about it, not everyone has to, I get it. But if any of these things felt like they resonated with you, I think it's worth a shot. Like look around, see if there's a therapist in your area that you either like, their bio on whatever website you find them on, or you jive with, their how they present or things that they say that they work with. Maybe it's worth just giving it a shot and seeing if therapy can help you.
Yeah, and if you guys are in California, you could always give us a call.
Yeah, Danny, Ollie. We're quite we don't do it together. That'd be a fun time. But yeah, it's like maybe Danny's like just calm, like present, like grounded serenity. Maybe you find that just calling. Maybe my
Maybe.
chaos.
Yeah, maybe you need an Energizer bunny instead, who does 5 miles a day and yoga before breakfast.
I mean, it's about every other day and it's Pilates. So, are you
My
even my
bad.
friend?
My bad.
I need the energy to go somewhere, Danny. But if you feel like you're out there and you need to try therapy, you want to try therapy, you have any questions about therapy, reach out to a therapist, reach out to us. Just ask us any questions. We're always here to help where we can.
Sounds fun. All right. Till next time.
Until next time, Danny. Ba-ba-da-ba.